Hello to everyone facing the screen. My name is Iba Jin, your presenter, PowerPoint designer, and entertainer. Today, our focus is integrating theories and practice for second language writing development. The context in which we discuss the issue is Chinese universities, where English is taught as a foreign language. So you may be curious about who I am and why this topic. Me? I spent my undergraduate years in Hubei University in China as an English major, which accounts for 4 out of 11 years of personal English learning history. As an advanced English as a foreign language learner, I was also a writing instructor. I taught TOEFL writing for EFL learners in Nanjing. In short, I had abundant L2 writing experience and some L2 writing teaching practice. And now, I am a graduate student in Peabody College, Bonneville University. I study English education and I am trained as a pre-service teacher. More importantly, I am guided by the awesome Professor Stacy Johnson into the world of second language acquisition theories and researches. Even as a novice in SRA field, I noticed the gap between theories and practice. The field SRA yielded considerable fruits, while L2 writing instruction in China is left a long way behind. Such situation is not limited to China. Let's do a little experiment. Read this sentence written by a EFL learner. What's your first reaction to this sentence? You may talk about absent articles, spelling errors, and misuse of clause. You name it. See? Errors, flaws, and problems. This is what we notice. Does anyone see beyond this and appreciate such an interesting metaphor full of black humor in the industrial age? For some reasons, the so-called errors, flaws, and problems stand out easily, and more often than not, writing teachers become grammar Nazis and fight for the war that never ends. However, someone says, there is no such thing as errors, flaws, and problems. They are just learner language. And this someone is Bill Van Patten, who refers to himself as the diva of SRA. Learner language is one of the essential concepts in SRA. In our context, I narrow its definition to the developing language of an L2 learner that is shaped or formed by interactions between L1 and L2 input and more factors. Before we hit the road, it never harms to have a quick map at hand. To begin with, I will introduce the less than ideal tradition in the context, obsession with flaws, errors, and problems. I will talk about the roots and the relevant teaching practice. And then luckily, we have the antidote in SRA. Learner language might be the key for gaining a new perspective on this issue, and I will state why and how SRA help with the issue. In addition, I will present a literature review on L2 writing researchers in China. We have pioneer researchers with great insight for SRA theories and L2 writing instruction. Standing on the shoulder of giants give us better view. And then bad news again, because we will witness the ongoing gloom. The huge gap between theories and researchers and practice persists. I will collect evidence, including tons of English writing error correction papers and surveys of L2 writing teaching practice to prove my point. Finally, I have some recommendations for L2 writing instruction teachers and their administrators and the Department of Education. Part 1. Less than ideal traditions. Our obsession with flaws, errors, and problems. EFL teachers in China is obsessed with so-called flaws, errors, and problems, as I am obsessed with topic choosing. But that is another story, and I will reserve it in the end. Like the little experiment I did on the dandelion metaphor sentence, such tradition might be ubiquitous in any L2 writing instruction. However, China has its unique root. Confucius, the world-famous thinker and educator in ancient China, says 有则改之，无则加勉, which means when other people point out your demerits, you should be modest and accept their words. Even if you do nothing wrong, you should stay alert to such mistakes. Personally, I translate this quote as correct it if you are wrong, stay alert if you are right. This quote gives a glimpse of Chinese perspective of mistakes, errors, and problems. It seems that Chinese people have the culturally embedded belief that being modest is a virtue, and they are very accustomed to being judged and advised by others, especially by their superiors. Even if the criticism does not apply to them, they generally accept it and won't argue much. In our context, students and teachers assume similar power relationship. Teachers are supposed to help students by pointing out their errors, mistakes, and problems, rather than praising them. Many Chinese parents and teachers believe that too much positive feedback results in arrogance and overconfidence. Pointing out their mistakes, defects, on the other hand, spur them forward. This might be the cultural root explanation for the obsession. Another origin is called test-oriented. Writing instruction is, to a certain degree, disregarded by curriculum and L2 teachers. EFL students in China generally practice English writing because of compulsory examinations, and the writing test in this examination heavily stress on grammatical correctness. Such orientation results in two trends in L2 writing instruction. Number one, form over content, and number two, product over process. Let's look at them one by one. Teachers may judge an essay to be incompetent simply because of many obvious grammar mistakes. Similarly, a non-native accent can lead to the impression of low language proficiency regardless of the speaking content. It works like the barrel effect. The lowest side of the barrel decides the maximum volume of water in the barrel. And for many Chinese EFL teachers, the lowest side is conventional expression. No matter how well the ideas and the organizations are, no matter how strong the voice is, your writing is doomed so long as you have unconventional expressions. Your essay is only emergent because you do not use complicated sentences structure taught by the teacher. Many writing teachers does not realize that Chinese EFL students have a lot of ideas to write about, but they're just trapped in the language. English writing is, much as Chinese writing, a way of expression in the first place. This owes to the test-oriented English writing. Form is over the content and grammar mistakes result in low scores. So teacher is obsessed with all the unconventional expression or less developed expression and call them flaws, errors, and problems. Because passing the test is the end, writing process as a mean is not valued. How do L2 writing teachers react to the so-called errors, flaws, and problems? Basically, this is what I used to do. I pointed out the errors, told my students the correct way or better way of expressions, and expected them to avoid similar errors after several times of correction. I expect them to understand a complicated sentence structure and use it next time. And if they do not use the structure, I feel confused. I've told you so many times, why don't you just use them? It's not difficult at all. On the one hand, my students received their feedback without arguing. Give a glimpse of my notes. They're like, okay, I made a lot of grammar mistakes. The teacher told me how to correct them, and I'll be more careful next time. That's the end of the story. This is what we call the teacher vehicle. The students are transported by their teachers to the correct place with little time, little need, and little passion for self-reflection. They stay for a while, just a while, and then recess back to their original place. And the teachers become Sisyphus, rolling the students up the hill again and again, in vain. Part 2. Luckily, we have the antidote for such a situation. But why the antidote is the antidote? Learner language or interlanguage are two terms sometimes used interchangeably. I regard them as the same concept in this presentation. Learner language is a dynamic, rule-based linguistic system that has been developed by an L2 learner who hasn't yet reached proficiency. It is shaped by L1 and target language input, but it implied more than that. A formula explains it. Learner language is more than L1 plus target input. It's like a chemical reaction. L1 interacts with L2 language input, forming a semi-product of L2, but not all interlanguage can be explained by such interaction. Some interlanguage remain unknown to us, and they are represented by question marks in the chemical flask. Why learner language in SLA is the antidote for obsession with errors, problems, and mistakes? Because it can be used to emphasize on development. If you believe in learner language, it means you believe, number one, L2 is acquired in a systematic way and follows some universal patterns or rules. Nothing can alter the sequence of acquisition, including all kinds of instruction and teaching. Number two, instruction or teaching can only influence the pace or accuracy of acquisition. According to the theories and researches relevant to learner language, most of the so-called errors, problems, and mistakes can be placed or explained by one stage of development. Why development is so important? You may be wondering why being obsessed with errors, flaws, and problems is outdated. I can give you an endless list, but first and foremost, the worst thing about it is when you call something an error, a mistake, or a problem, you may mean that it should not exist. A teacher calls something an error when he or she assumes that the student should have learned and mastered something, and it is the responsibility of the previous teachers to deal with it. But what if the students have never learned such knowledge? See? Obsession with errors, flaws, and problems means teachers may assume themselves to be bug fixers instead of capacity builders. Without doubt, some errors, flaws, and problems are like small bugs that just need some reminders, but some are not. L2 writing teachers and instructors need to reconceptualize errors, flaws, and problems as phenomenon of development and shoulder the responsibilities. They need to know how learner language is developed, what roles instruction play in L2, and that's why learner language is the antidote. Part 3. L2 writing researchers in China have yielded plenty fruits. Let's stand on the shoulders of giants to have a better view. L2 writing researchers in China have its traits. First, English is not a second but a foreign language in China. So the researchers mainly discuss English as a foreign language rather than a second language. Second, because many L2 writing researchers are also teachers or instructors, their studies are teaching instruction inclined. Third, the researches and studies are mostly limited to university context. L2 writing researches in high schools and middle schools are scarce, while elementary schools almost blank. This is the pie chart for L2 writing researches in China's L2 core journals from 1991 to 2008. It is obvious that L2 writing teaching and instruction is a very popular topic, accounting for 42% of all the L2 writing researches. On the other hand, L2 writing process and writing product researches catch the same amount of attention. Almost all of the researches are conducted in university context. These keywords include most of the writing researches dealing with flaws, errors, and problems. Many scholars with great insights have changed their perspective. They regard problems in L2 writing as a sign of development. They try to explain them in SRA theories and bring fresh air into the classroom. The two keywords are L1 transfer and feedback mechanism. L1 transfer is a heated topic in China since 2006. Calling errors as errors cannot solve anything, so people try to figure out why. The most obvious factor is, of course, Chinese, the first language. It seems that many errors problems can find their root in L1, which is called negative transfer. For a very long time, talking about transfer means negative transfer. And talking about L1 participation, it means L1 interference. Then people realize that transfer can be positive. When positive transfer proves to exist, the question comes, is negative transfer always outnumber positive transfer? Scholars try to quantify and compare two kinds of transfer. It's like a war that never ends. However, Wen Qiufang and Wang Wenyu focus on in which aspects does L1 participate in L2 writing, and the relationship between L1 participation and L2 writing proficiency. As we can see in the line chart, basically, the participation of L1 declines as L2 proficiency increases throughout undergraduate years. The significance of this study is viewing L1 participation in L2 writing as a dynamic, predictable factor that should be valued instead of an obstacle to be got rid of. Later on, Wang Lifei and Wen Qiufang's findings supports the claim that L1 writing proficiency can be positively transferred to L2 writing in a more profound and deeper way than negative transfer. This is what happened in 2004. In 2015, Zhou Xu pointed out that L2 writing teachers and students' rejection of L1 participation is not proper. He suggests teachers make full use of their L1 as support stick for L2 writing. It seems that the L2 writing research field, the frontline findings have reached consensus that L1 participation in L2 writing is not a problem, and the so-called flaws, errors, and problems should be viewed as one stage of development. The validity of error correction practice in teaching has been undermined. On the other hand, the feedback mechanism is also a very popular topic. What should be included in feedback? Error correction only? And who gives feedback? A teacher or a peer, and what are their strengths and weaknesses? Should feedback always come in hard copies, or it may come in forum or online discussions? When to give feedback? After the product or while the product is still processing? And how a teacher know whether the feedback is efficient or not? How he or she monitors students' reaction to the feedback? The traditional product-oriented writing has been questioned for a long time. Feedback in L2 writing, on the other hand, rose in 2005 and have become a heated topic today. Zhang Yanhong in 2010 points out that traditional feedback or evaluation in L2 writing are product-oriented, monotonous, and low efficient. Innovation in feedback mechanism is the coming trend. While the theories in L2 writing is in the front line, the ongoing gloom is the gap between theories and practice. When I search English writing error corrections on CNKI database, the Chinese version of Google Scholar, tons of studies and researches still jump out. If you search the keywords English writing and errors between 2014 to 2016, there are over 8,000 results for such kind of papers. In 2006, Shanghai Jiao University, one of the top 5 universities in China, L2 writing feedback from teachers, if there was any, was limited to marking grammar mistakes and giving scores. In the very rare writing lectures, teachers still concentrated on error correction. This is what Wang Yi found in 2006. In 2014, Hawaii University, one of the top 60 universities in China, my graduation paper is totally disregarded because some professors says they found some grammar mistakes on the first page, so they stopped reading. No survey or report for application of advanced L2 writing instruction is found in any core academic magazines. And now let's have a closer look at Shanghai Jiao University's survey in 2006 conducted by Wang Yi. The pie chart represents students' attitude towards L2 writing instruction they have received. The green piece, which stands for mediocre L2 writing instruction, can be interpreted as dissatisfied because the survey is not anonymous and the students might not want to offend their teachers. Then actually 57% of students are unsatisfied with current L2 writing instruction. The chart below compares students' attitudes towards listening, speaking, reading, and writing. We can see 40% of students feel speaking is the most difficult one, while 25% students are troubled with writing. Only 12% of students have interest in writing, and only 4% students believe L2 writing is the most important skill. The message is simple and clear. L2 writing is difficult, but students do not care. They don't like it, nor do they value it. So now what? I have some recommendations. Firstly, SRA theories or educational linguistics should be included in teacher training program. L2 writing researchers, especially those involved in L2 instruction, should apply their research's products to use. For example, how instruction can influence L2 writing development in a positive way. This knowledge lays foundation for their teaching philosophy and teaching methodology. Secondly, a national core L2 instruction model of better efficiency should be established. The core L2 writing instruction model. The instruction model may include what feedback teachers must give for their students' writing, such as positive feedback or comments on main ideas or structure. Currently, L2 writing instruction is highly arbitrary without any regulation. Writing tests are standardized, while L2 writing instruction is not. A core instruction model will help teachers to organize their lecture in a better way. Third, English in China is a foreign language, and L2 writing teachers cannot produce native live writing samples. So building a corpus for L2 writing might help. The Authentic Language Database from America and other English-speaking countries is the best model for L2 students writers in China. At present, corpus in China is thriving, but most of them serve research's purpose, and a few of them is directly applied in L2 writing class. So my suggestion is developing some corpus that can be directly employed in L2 writing lecture. Thanks for listening, and here is my email address. If you have any questions or ideas, please feel free to contact me. And these are my references. Thanks for watching.